Hello, welcome to Streaky Mastering TV with me, Streaky G, and this is Shay. Shay's my assistant at Streaky Mastering. We thought as it's Friday we'd get close and answer a few questions that have been in the comments, and maybe some that have been sent in by people, general questions on mastering and what I think of stuff. So over to you, Shay.
Yep. You haven't seen these questions, so this is Connor from Kent. Hello, Streaky. I wanted to ask, why do mastering studios not like to receive limited files to work from? Because a lot of the time the limiter is what gives the track its sound.
Yeah, I agree. If you're working with a limiter, then you're obviously pushing into the limiter, and that's giving you the feel of the track, which I can totally appreciate. Most mastering engineers don't like having limiters on because they take all the peaks off of the audio, so you don't have as much dynamic. Now with dance music, I know that has to be like tight, so you end up with that kind of sound, but still it's worth bringing down the mix a little bit and trying to work without limiters, because then if you leave peaks on, the mastering engineer has got much nicer equipment and hopefully more knowledge to make that song sound similar to how you had it, but done in a nicer way. So at the end, it's good to present the mastering engineer with a version that you've done where you've pushed it into the limiter, and also a version where you just turn the limiter off of the mix bus and then it leaves the peaks on there, so that the engineer can listen to what you were listening to as you were making it, and then sort of apply the same thing but maybe add it in a different way, or maybe put some different EQ on to sort of open it up and make it sound, you know, they can get more out of it if they've got the peaks left, rather than it just being a crushed sound that is just, you know, not leaving any room for any work. Sometimes it's not even worth getting it mastered if it's so crushed, and a lot of the time I personally will send it back and ask people for the version without the limiter on the mix bus. So does that answer it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, if it is integral to the song,
yeah,
is it better that they do leave it on but just bring it down a few dB to send to you, rather than just take it off and then?
Yeah, but you're still leaving even if you're just bringing down the mix bus faders, you're still leaving no peaks, so it's still just going to be a flat waveform. So it's probably better just to take it off, and then, because, you know, I can turn it down if I've got the track and it's turned out. I can turn it down. That makes not a lot of difference really.
Yeah.
Whether it's 3 dB louder, 10 dB louder, it's still going to be crushed at that point. I would say don't push it as much into the limiter, but the best thing to do is just take the limiter off, because you can always put a limiter back on. I mean, someone's only going to be using like an L2 or a L2007 or whatever they've got, and so they're just going to be smashing into that, and most mastering places will have those plugins anyway, but they should have. So
no, fair enough. Right, next question is from Steve from Perth in Australia, and he says, "Hi Streaky, my question is, with more and more people mastering their own music in their bedrooms using plugins, do you think that the need for analog mastering gear will deteriorate?"
So do I think that analog mastering gear is on the way out?
Basically, do you think analog, because of new plugins and basically them being available to everyone?
No.
No?
I think that you get a different texture and a different vibe and a harmonic from analog equipment, and each analog equipment sounds different, so they're all adding a different flavour. Where I find with plugins, they don't necessarily add as much flavour as analog gear. You don't have tubes involved, you don't have wires involved, you don't have A to D and D to A converters changing the sound. So you've got loads of variables that are changing the sound, adding stuff and taking things away. So it's kind of the combination of all of that. But also, I don't think that you can totally disregard plugins, because you need to get things loud, you need to get things very clean, and that's what plugins are really good at. And they're good at doing just very precise things. So that obviously with mastering, that's important too.
And I suppose some of the sound of today as well is a very clean sound.
Yeah, it is. So it depends what sort of music you're doing, but I wouldn't necessarily want to just use digital stuff. You've had, it's been in the digital world for so long, and you've made it in the digital world with loads of plugins. It's nice to get a little bit of warmth and a nice bit of analog processing on there to warm it up, to give it a little bit more energy, a bit more life. Rather than just slamming it digitally all the way. It's just a lot of the time it's going to sound thin and not have as much life. And and you know, a lot of music these days is like that, and it's a shame because you need to feel the music rather than just have it crushing your eardrums, and you don't get any longevity out of the music that way. It doesn't sound as musical. So having a mix of the two is definitely the way forward. I don't think you can't just have analog these days either, because you just wouldn't get the level, and you wouldn't get that clean sound.
Yeah.
Well, you get a clean sound, but you wouldn't get as that kind of hitting clean sound.
Yeah.
I don't think. It depends what sort of music you're doing, obviously.
Yeah, true.
If you're doing acoustic music, then you could get away without having plugins and just have it really open, and because you're not trying to push it against stuff. But if you're doing dance stuff or urban music or rock, then most people want it, you know, limited to a degree. But you can do that really well with the compressors and EQ, and then maybe a touch of limiting at the end, just to sort of just carve the peaks off in a nice way, rather than going, okay, slam it 5 dB with a limiter and hope for the best.
Right, next question is from Chris from South London. And he says, I can see from your website that you have a pretty impressive gear list. If you could have one piece of gear at the moment, analog, what would it be and why?
Analog. Shadow Hills compressor.
Yep.
Loads of knobs.
Yep.
Loads of different sounds. The thing I like about analog gear, the gear that I usually get is stuff that you can do more than one thing on. So you can, you know, I really like the Maselec multi-band because you can do de-essing on it. You can really change the mix. You get loads of bang for your buck, if you like. That doesn't mean that I like stuff where it's all in one, but I just like something where I can do different tricks with and stuff. Yeah. So that looks to me, although I've read loads about it, but it looks to me like a little bit of kit that I might like, where you can get different sounds from the nickel and all that stuff. So
and that's compression side. What about EQ?
EQ, the Buzz Audio looks good.
Yep.
I'd like that. That'd be nice. Loads of knobs.
That'd be nice.
It's quite big. Yeah, that'd be nice to play with. See what that's like. I've used most other EQs in my time, so it'd be interesting to see if that's living out. A lot of people like it. I've heard that it's quite similar to the Maselec EQ. Yeah. And the Maselec EQ, I think, is more versatile. But you know, I've got loads of Maselec stuff, so Leif can have a 5 minutes off. I'd like to have a little go on the Buzz one and see what that's like.
To add to Chris's question, what is the best EQ you've ever used, analog wise?
I like the GML 9.5.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's one of my favourites without a doubt.
What's the reason for that?
Well, it's clean. You can get really nice tight low end on it. The high ends are really super smooth. And also the mids, you know, I got taught how to use that by Kevin Metcalf, who's Soundmasters, and that's where I was before I started on my own, and that was like a really great way to learn because he knew all the tricks on that. So that's why I like that one, I think, a lot. But you know, I'm a big fan of the Maselec EQ. Again, going back to that, just because it's just it sounds so nice. It's so clean,
and there's so many different things you can do with one piece of kit.
Well, with an EQ, you're more limited on what you can do. But the nice thing about that, if you use that with an MS box, at the same time you can do loads of different tricks with that, and that sounds really nice. You know, but you have to know how to use the Maselec a little bit more. The GML I find is a little bit more instant, but I think that may be down to the training I had on it more than anything. But yeah, those two EQs are my favourite, I suppose.
So you're using the EQ more in midside than you are stereo at the moment, or is it something that depends on project to project?
Depends on the track, really. You can damage stuff a lot with midside things, so I wouldn't go too heavy on that. I do use it a lot, but not on everything, but on you know, if I'm trying to get a certain effect, then I'll use it. But usually it's for the low end to get things nice and tight. That's, you know, but yeah, it depends on the music. Depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, maybe it's worth doing a video on MS at some stage.
Yeah, I suppose it does depend on the mix as well, really, doesn't it? If the mix isn't wide enough or is too wide, or
that's the thing with MS, because it's really about affecting someone's mix, and so you don't want to use it if it's a nice sounding mix. Then don't use MS, because you're playing with the phase a lot more, and so you're probably going to do more harm than good. But if you've got something that actually needs you to get really stuck into, then MS is a good way to do that. So Yeah, that's it really.
That's it. Well, thank you, Connor. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Chris, for your questions.
Thank you for watching. I hope it hasn't been too dull. Shay, Streaky.
Yep.
Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.